Hey there, it's Sandee Sgarlata. Get ready to dive deep into incredible stories of people who've taken life's challenges and turned them into a roadmap to happiness. On this show, we're not just talking about overcoming obstacles, we're uncovering the real, gritty secrets to living a life filled with peace, joy, and genuine happiness. This is Happiness All, so let's get started because happiness is a choice, and the choice is yours. Victoria, such a pleasure to see you today. How's it going?
Likewise, it's going great. Just had some nice breakfast with my husband.
Are you on the West Coast?
I'm in Utah. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, different time zone. I'm in the DC, so it's afternoon here
Oh,
for
nice.
us. But great. All right. So you do so many amazing things, and I know you've worked with billion-dollar companies such as let's see, you had Peter Rive, CTO of Solar City, celebrities like Cindy Crawford. You're the author of Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Bending Reality: How to Make the Impossible Probable. And you're a Forbes 30 under 30 venture capitalist, Yale University and Harvard Business School alumni. Wow. Incredible, incredible resume there, Victoria. It's like
Thank you.
suddenly feeling a little like, okay, Yale and Harvard MBA grad. Okay. That's really awesome. So first of all, I want to hear about your story. You're obviously incredibly brilliant, but what made you want to go into this realm of personal development? I love the name of your book. We're going to talk about that. But was there a turning point in your life, in your career, where I'm going to walk away from venture capitalists and do this? Like, what was that moment like for you? What happened?
Yeah, so I still work a lot with entrepreneurs, as you saw in my bio. But I found that when I was a venture capitalist, that it wasn't really about like the business model or like a new tactic. That wasn't typically what was holding the CEO back. It really required like a deep personal transformation for their leadership, for their vision, for, their courage to come online. And so I found that more important, more bigger needle mover than business transformation was really that personal transformation. And that's why I left, essentially. That plus seeing and witnessing so many brilliant, wealthy, successful CEOs that felt they lacked freedom, they lacked fulfillment, they lacked health, they lacked relationships, and I just sort of felt like, what's the point of having influence and impact if you feel like you don't have freedom or fulfillment? And so I now really help my clients become wildly successful. So really achieve things beyond their wildest imagination. However, do it in a way that brings peace and fulfillment and freedom so they don't burn out. So in some ways, it's like we're replacing that hustle and grind with like ease and speed.
I love it. Hustle and grind to ease and speed. Love that. Um, that's really incredible because me and my colleagues are actually doing a live event, and it's all about that.
I love that.
It's all about that because there's so many people out there who have achieved so much success, and then but they're just not happy.
Yeah.
They're unfulfilled, and they don't understand how their personal way of being and their personal way of showing up completely flows into their work. There really is that work-life balance, and it doesn't mean balancing the amount of time that you spend in each. It's understanding how the two parts of our lives intersect and living in a way that complements both, I
Yeah.
guess. I
Yeah.
mean, hustle and grind to ease and speed. I mean, you said it perfectly right there. Yeah, I love that. So tell me about this book, Bending Reality. Like, can you explain? I understand what you're talking about. What do you mean by bending reality when it comes to your book?
Yeah. So similar to what we were talking about, like the state of their being, we're always bending our reality. It's just many of us are doing so unconsciously and in a direction that we don't want. Right. So if we're living from this contracted place of fear and doubt and stress and anxiety and worry and like trying to prove something to themselves or the world that they finally matter, or they're successful enough, that with that contractive energy is actually bending the odds out of their favor. It's almost like walking a tightrope. There's nothing we're going to be better or more effective at if we're actually walking a tightrope. And then the more meaning we make about like, I have to make this thing happen with this urgency and time crunch, it's almost like we're just putting that tightrope on a taller building. And can we do anything effectively if we're walking a tightrope across a skyrise? No. And yet that is how most people are living their lives. And it's really holding them back. And so what I teach my clients is how to bend reality, bend the odds in their favor. So once you realize that you have been bending your reality, of course, the next question is, well, how do I bend reality toward what I want? And so that's why the tagline is how to make the impossible probable. And so it's really teaching people, how do we really be mindful of all the ways that we might be consciously and unconsciously through the thoughts and feelings and behaviors and actions that we take, bend our odds in our favor by operating expansively. So all the tools, all the methodology and techniques that I use with my clients that I talk about in the book really help make the state of expansion, which is like courage, trust, power, surrender, gratitude, all these feel good energies. It makes it your default state of being. So to me, that is when we are highest peak performing, is when we can operate from this more expansive state versus that really like tight grip on life state.
I love it. I've been talking about for years now about your getting into your zone of genius because I'm a peak performance expert, and I'm actually am launching a new television show which is called the Peak Performance Playbook, but it's all around sports.
I
But
love it.
it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's getting into that zone of genius. And the reason I chose to make my new show tailored on sports is because I really feel like today's athletes are tomorrow's leaders. Because when you are an elite athlete, you understand what getting into that consciousness is, because everything you're talking about is consciousness and becoming a
Yeah.
conscious leader,
Yeah.
right? From being just a leader to a conscious leader where you're thinking about staying in that zone, right? Because
Yeah.
CEOs, they're in their zone of excellence all the time, right?
Yeah.
They're always in their zone of excellence, but they're still stressed, frustrated. Their choices are ego driven instead of conscious driven,
Yeah.
right? And imagine a world where we have leaders that are making decisions from a place of consciousness or love as opposed to ego or fear.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what
Right,
I found is that everyone is teaching this on in some terminology, as you mentioned. So
right.
higher frequencies that maybe someone who's spiritual understands. Someone in the business world is like, what are you talking about frequencies?
That's
Right.
right,
I
right.
just use more simple framework of contraction versus expansion, because contraction is the ego drivenness. It's the fear, it's the doubt, it's the physical sensation in the body of a limitation, right?
Right.
People can wrap their head around that, no matter if this is their first person development book, and then this expansive state where you feel like your chest is open, your breathing is slowed down, you're in that flow state, you're in your zone of genius, you're in that peak performance. What some people might call like expansive frequencies, expansive consciousness, right? So I really distilled it down into what I find simple terms that someone who's
Right.
skeptical or very analytical can wrap their head around.
So what do you find has been the best way for somebody to really recognize, right? Because you're going to have these um egos, right? And men, generally speaking, tend to operate more ego based because of the masculinity behind it, right? What do you find to be the best method to help people recognize when they're showing up in that way, so that for the listener, oh, is that me? Like, can you distinguish that?
Yeah, so the line on the ego that I love is from Matt Kahn, and it says the ego is an imaginary identity of a overstimulated nervous system. So it's like when your nervous system is super wound up, you're activated, you're triggered, you're in that fight or flight mode, you have this thing called an ego that shows up, right? And another way of putting that, I think, is that the ego is sometimes the unhealed wounds of our inner child.
Yes.
So that really inflamed personality shows up as an ego. And I think that part of why men even have it more than women per se is because men are even more disconnected from their emotions. And in my work, it's really through feeling that we heal. And so if men are really disconnected from feeling their emotions, then they're even going to be more frozen and blocked in that kind of wounded place, essentially. And so what I teach in my book is like, really just being able to ask yourself, and we can talk about this right now. It's like, if you were to imagine the last 7 days, an event not going the way you wanted it to, and just kind of feeling into that somatic state of what that feels like in your body, you would notice like, well, my chest is tightening up and my breathing is shallowing. And I'm kind of feeling like, a little bit of fear. I'm starting to sort of worst case scenario plotting. I'm starting to worry about jumping to conclusions. Like all of that comes through when we're in this contracted state. And on the opposite side, if I were like saying, in the last 7 days, what went really well, what was really pleasant, you'd be like, oh, I noticed like when I feel into this pleasant moment, my chest is opening up, my heart feels more open, my breathing is actually like calmer and flowier, and it actually feels like it's very easy to see and sense possibilities from here. Like everything feels possible from this state. And so the first code in bending reality is just really to pause and ask yourself in this very moment, do you feel contracted or expanded in your body? And it's really incredible because it's just a felt sensation and you know it immediately. It's just that we tend to live in a world that disconnects from sensations in the body because we're all living in our heads. So it does take a moment where you're like, oh, if I just breathe and feel into this moment, I realize, yeah, everything is super tightened. I can feel like my heart sort of like shutting and closing its off and guarding itself. And everything is sort of tightening down my center channel is what contraction feels like.
Yeah, I love that. And, the thing is it's a practice, right? Like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I have always found so challenging to get across from people, especially for men. Sorry, guys, don't mean to be picking on men today. I'm certainly not. I just know from 3 brothers, I have a son, on my second husband, like
Wow.
I've been surrounded by men. And the thing is like, they just don't recognize it. I mean, they're happy to go out and work on their golf game, right? 4 or 5 days a week, they go out and they practice golf, but taking that moment to pause, and even like, when I said, like, put your hand on your heart and just kind of breathe into it. How am I feeling? Just like recognizing that. And a lot of people, there's just a resistance there,
Yeah.
you know? And, and I've had this show now for almost 4 years, and like, just people want it, but I don't understand. And maybe maybe this is something they teach you at Harvard. I don't know. Like, how do you break through? Like, because I know people have to want it, right? They have to want, but if they don't want it, then they're not going to even try, you
Yeah,
know?
so I would say like in my book, and the reason why I actually work with a lot of men is because everything is positioned as, do you want to be wildly successful as quickly as possible? Like, do you want to be, really achieving your dreams above and beyond? And that's very motivating. Every, guy who wants to work on his golf game wants to see real progress being made. They want to see tangible results. They want to see things that are make them more money. If you actually keep it there into terms that actually matter to them, they're motivated. But if
Right.
you start to say like, hey, do you want to be more emotionally vulnerable so you can have deeper relationships and connections? And that's a little bit
That's
too fuzzy and not, valuable to them. So,
right.
I think that's how we kind of get around it is I really don't, personally take my client anywhere that they're going to have resistance. I really go meet them where they're at with
Right.
what motivate them. And then I use language and tools that will resonate with where they are in their consciousness journey. And that's partly why I think I'm, chosen by these business leaders is because I went to Yale and I went to Harvard Business School. So I'm bringing this lens that's bridging business and mysticism, science and spirituality, so for them, I'm not like someone who's just all woo. They're kind of like, oh, for the first time, you're saying this in a way that actually makes sense for me and that I can get behind, versus something that sounds a little bit too spiritual.
Yeah. And I think that is a resistance there, because spirituality means something different for everyone. And I usually, like, if I'm being interviewed, I usually say, I'm I'm going to talk to you in a way that's spiritual, not religious,
Hmm.
right? Because I always want to distinguish that, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, that spirituality is Jesus, Buddha, Allah, the universe, God, what
Mother
the
Nature.
chair, right, like anything, right? It's just a different power or force. And but the thing is, what I think is also great with you having those credentials is that we do have schools today, such as Yale and Harvard and other, phenomenal universities across the world that are studying spirituality, and they're studying energy and how the energy moves through us and how our thoughts do emit frequencies and things like
Yeah.
that.
It's an exciting time to be alive. We're finally like going to understand the science of spirituality.
Right?
Yeah.
And the universe and how the universe, what role that plays in our daily lives. So that's really exciting, really exciting. So tell me about how you made that transition, because and and I wanted to come from a place of, so that the audience, because that's kind of a big thing, and I think we're facing that more than ever in today's world, especially this year, where many people are questioning what they're doing and why they're doing it. What was it like for you to go from being this Forbes 30 under 30 venture capitalist to be like, no, I'm going to do this now? Can you walk our listeners through some of the process that you took and the mindset that you took? Because that's kind of a big leap.
It
That's a
is.
really big leap. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did, and then I'll also kind of put it within this framework of usually the sexier and more prestigious a job sounds, the more of a trap it's probably for our heart and our soul, for what's like actually aligned for us. And the less sexy it is and sort of eye rolling it is, the more likely it's probably your unique path for life, you know? So I'll just say that. And as I tell the story, you'll understand what I mean. So when I went to Yale and Harvard, like everyone wanted to go in finance. I did work at Goldman Sachs. I worked at Google X in my early 20s. Like I did all the things that are considered prestigious. And I found myself there and just surprisingly was just so unhappy and so unfulfilled. But kept telling myself, well, I should just be grateful because look at my life. Like everybody wants this job. I even
That's
had
right.
Harvard School peers of mine who were still trying to break into venture capital. Many of them are like, well, I'm going to go become a successful entrepreneur first so that I can finally come back into venture capital. So it was like that was the end all be all for a lot of people. So I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, who am I to be unhappy? Like I just need to count my blessings more and just be, more grateful for my life because this is a dream job. And then I started to realize like, gosh, I've I had my version of like an existential awakening slash, crisis breakdown. It was like I started just getting really like almost depressed when I acknowledged everyone from like my best friends from school to my family, my parents who are entrepreneurs, but are always like so disconnected from, life and family because they're just so busy hustling and struggling and sacrificing, to my brother, to, all of these successful entrepreneurs that are multi-billion dollar companies that we're backing. And I just saw that they all kind of shared the same kind of void. And it was like they were looking to fill the void in all the wrong places. And just watching that and seeing that it was like just so clear and apparent across the board, honestly made me feel very depressed and very sad. And I kind of felt this sense of like, what's the point of helping people save more time or extend life through the technologies that we're investing in if like people don't even know how to be happy with the time you already have, So just asking myself those sort of existential questions made it such that I couldn't really be happy. It was sort of like when your eyes open up and you can't unknow or unsee what you start to notice everywhere. And it
Right.
was just to become painful where I was like, I can't just go to work and pretend that everything's fine when the people I most care about are like very miserable. And we're just supposed to pretend it's normal and like not notice everyone's miserable and just go to our work. And that was just something that once again, like I saw it really shook me and it made me start to feel like I have to find a way, my unique way of contributing or like helping bring, as you would call it, like raise humanity's consciousness or like help quote unquote wake people up or like whatever that kind of little intention I had after reading The Alchemist, 10 years ago. So that was sort of like the innocent, naive kind of intention that I had when I had my existential awakening. And then I also just sort of recognized like, wow, I feel like I'm in a really unique position having come from those really like elite worlds of achievement and success, but also really going so deep into ancient wisdom and spiritual laws and really understanding kind of what is that disconnect, because I'm a high performer myself, so it's like, I really get what motivates that high performer to, the ends of stress and anxiety in order to finally prove something about themselves, and the motivations of that high performer. It was like, I was that person, and now I'm like on my journey to finding a new way forward. Right. So yeah, I do feel that that was part of just my existential awakening, or my soul kind of finally waking itself up and being like, no, there has to be a better way. And then coming into the unsexiness now, like when I told my friends that I was going to leave to go do this thing called coaching, like I got a lot of eye rolls and a lot of like, you're going to become a life coach. Like that sounds cute. And don't you not make a lot of money doing that? And who's going to hire you? You're like younger than all these people that you would potentially be advising. So, I just got a lot of that, and that can be really, difficult, like it's kind of the thing where when you go to that networking event and people ask you what you do, you're kind of like, I don't really want to talk about it, because like I don't really know how to talk about it in a way that I really understand how to, that has the same prestige as saying that I went to venture capital, right? So it was definitely like a little bit of a self-conscious transition for me. Like I kind of would prefer nobody to ask me like what I do for a living. But at some point I really did actually start to identify and realize what I started the story with, which is, gosh, like it's really the least sexy thing that almost looks a little silly to the outside world that is probably masking the very thing that is meant for you. Right. Like you're like maybe distracted by the shiny trap of prestige and what seems really hard to get, because if I get the really hard to get thing, then everyone's gonna be so impressed with me, versus I did the thing that everybody thought was silly and laughable and kind of like, who does she think she is? And then now it's like everything has just been effortless, like feels like it's been clockwork smooth for me since I made this transition. And it's because I let myself do the more aligned thing, even though it didn't impress people the same way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's because of that alignment that, when we're not in alignment with our purpose, the universe understands that, because there's a resistance that's happening, right? If you're
Yeah.
trying and you're pushing and you're trying to make this work, and if it's not fully in alignment, that's what's going to happen, right? Because the
Yes.
universe doesn't understand. It's everything in the universe is neutrality. It's all neutral, right? And so whether you're thinking happy thoughts or negative thoughts, the universe doesn't know. You're thinking happy thoughts, you're going to get more happy back, because you get back what you put out. If you're putting
Yeah.
out more negative thoughts, the universe doesn't know that it's negative. It just knows, okay, okay, let's give you more of that.
You
It's
want
all
more of what
neutrality.
you're feeling? Great. We'll give you more of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's
Wow.
why I do think that life is meant to be painful in order for you to wake up and realize I need to change. Like
Yes.
you're out of alignment. It's supposed to be painful.
Yeah. And and like it or not, we're in this world. There has to be, you have, in order to have darkness, you have light. And
Yeah.
there's the yin and the yang, the duality. Thank you. It was that was word was slipping my brain. Um, but yeah, in order to, you got to have the rain in order to see the rainbow, and like all of those things have to happen in order for us to wake up. Wow. Yeah. So when you were telling your story, I was curious, did you have a mentor or somebody that you could talk to give you guidance as you were making this transition?
I had so many. I hired over 25 coaches.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've been like a power user of coaching and therapy and healing and all the things, which is why I think it was like, you know, obviously inevitable that I would eventually move into this path myself.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I do feel like, over, like maybe 11 years ago, I hired a life coach. And since that, I've hired a sex coach, a business coach, energy healer coach, a spiritual coach, a feminine empowerment coach. Like I've hired every kind of coach under the sun since. And yeah, I do feel that it's so important to, have that guidance and to really find people who are a living embodiment of the thing that you want, whether it's freedom or abundance or success or love or whatever it is, more aliveness in your life. Like I was definitely drawn to, working with people who were able to teach me all of these little different puzzle pieces. And that's really how I was able to create my book, was because I've been studying so many modalities, so many different frameworks, so many different kinds of coaching. And I was starting to just see this meta framework emerge, where it was like, wow, everyone in different words is sort of teaching the same thing. And if I were to distill this complex concept into something that's really like easy to understand and actionable and almost obvious to you once you see it, it would be Bending Reality, the book. So that's why I created my book, was to distill it all down.
I love it. I love the name of it, Bending Reality. That is so cool. So what was the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, I've had so many great advice. I think in every area of life, there's probably like different, like money advice and love advice and things like that. But I would say across the board, perhaps one of the lines that really stuck with me is, results don't take time, they take courage.
Oh, results don't take time, they take courage. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And that has really just become like a subconscious programming for me. Like I think part of why I get really collapsing time around results and challenges is because I just live my life that way. I don't feel like, oh, well, if I want to get there, it's going to take 10 years because, I have to climb these ladders. It's sort of just like, oh, I hold my vision and things happen at warp speed because I show up as the most courageous, powerful, confident, self-trusting version of me. And that always seems to get the results, more than a longer time getting a diploma or anything else.
Right. Oh my gosh, I love that. What great words of advice for people, because it's really so true, you know.
Yeah.
All those little sayings, folks, you may think they're quirky or whatever, but they're truth. And if you can find that one, and it may change. I have up on my board, I change it. Mine just says you're not getting this day back.
I love that.
Right? Like little things that you can put around to help remind you, right?
Like
Like
affirmations. Yeah.
you're not getting this day back. Yes, but I love that. Results don't take time, they take courage.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you for showing up as you, unapologetically you, because that's how I like I love that when people just show up unapologetically authentic. Like here I am. I love
Thank
it.
you.
And
Yeah, we're
that's
actually
what I
studying,
feel.
about magnetism and frequency. We're now studying that authenticity and alignment emits a greater electromagnetic field than even like mind heart coherence, So
Well, yeah, and where's
one
my,
and the same.
oh, I put it behind me. I had a guest, it's back there. I'm getting ready to go on a retreat and I'm taking it with me. Who created the love tuner. It's called a love tuner. And it's when you do breathing exercises, you slowly breathe out and it emits the frequency, the sound, which is 528 gigahertz, which is the
Yeah,
frequency of love. Well,
love
now
that.
they're saying that authenticity is an
It's
even
even
higher, it's
stronger.
even
Yeah.
stronger. It's even
Yeah.
stronger.
Even higher, stronger frequency than love, which is crazy because we thought love was the answer and love was it. And now it's
It's
authenticity.
authenticity, right? And like not everybody understands that. So you give your definition of that, and then I'll piggyback, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the way I think about it is that it's almost like we're all antennas, or we're all kind of these um sending, emitting, and also receiving frequencies. And it's like being on a radio station that if you aren't congruent and you don't have mind heart coherence, you're out of alignment, you're inauthentic. It's like hitting that static radio station where you're like, I can't quite hear it. Like I can't get a clear signal. But when you are actually aligned and congruent and authentic, you have that mind heart coherence. All of a sudden, it's like a loud, clear, crisp, beautiful signal. And when you radiate that signal, you are able to actually also magnetize back what it is that you're calling in, because you're like a beacon that's actually able to be heard by others and attract who's right for you because you have a clear signal, versus when you have static and noise, who knows what that's a match for, and it's all diluted down and you're not getting a strong frequency out or in.
I love that. And I was just envisioning, like when we used to have the actual dials in your car, maybe some still do, and you have to just slightly tune it
Yeah.
in.
Like,
to
where
get
is
rid of
that
that
spot?
static.
Yeah.
Where's that static? Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That was awesome. Yeah. Yeah, because showing up, it's just being who you are. And like, again, unapologetically, like, this is who I am. If you don't like it, oh, well.
Yeah.
Right.
And to come back to bravery, it's like it's a luxury
Yeah.
we all have, but not all of us are courageous enough to actually be ourselves.
Right. Because I think that many times you're projecting onto other people what you think they want to see from you, or
Yeah.
or you're
It is.
projecting, yeah, yeah, like, oh, I need to show up this way. Well, no, you just show up,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know.
we're meant to be right for some people and not right for others, but no one will be
Yeah,
able to know if you're sending out a noisy signal.
right. And I always tell, I work with a lot of people on using media to explode their brand. But it's like, for me, how I show up, how I'm showing up right now is how I show up on a live television interview. It's how I show up at a networking event. I'm meeting my girlfriend for dinner tonight. I will show up the exact same like, there's one version of Sandee. This is it, right? And everywhere I go, like, they're like, oh my God, you talk just like you do on your podcast. I'm like, yeah, I do, because it's me. That's just me, right? So of course
Yeah.
I'm going to show up, right? And I don't think everybody truly understands that. And it's just be yourself
Yeah. And that
all the time.
Yeah, that's such a good sign actually for when you're not in a career that's in alignment. Like that's part of my signal that I wasn't in the right place was I couldn't be myself
Yeah.
in finance.
Wow. Well, I'm just proud of you for taking that leap,
Thank you.
because I'm sure I'm making assumptions here, but I'm guessing there was probably family who may have paid for your education and be like, what do you mean you're leaving, after
Right.
going to
Actually, it
Harvard?
was
And
my venture capital firm paid for me to go to Harvard Business School. And then I
oh,
came back
wow.
to the firm. Yeah. Yeah, but
Sorry.
but yes, they were like, what do you mean you're leaving?
Well, and I remember 20 years ago, with my ex-husband, and at one of his company events, and there was one of the wives I was talking to, and she was a medical doctor, and she decided not to go back to practice medicine so she can stay home with her children. And that was just so upsetting to me. I'm like, how can you be a medical doctor and you're just going to throw it all away to stay home with your children? 20 years later today, I'm like, good for her.
Yeah, so authentic. Yeah.
That's good for her. Like, just because you have a medical degree or a law degree or
Yeah.
anything doesn't mean you need to waste your life in a profession
No,
that
it's
doesn't
that
serve
cost.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? So often, it's going to go back to our high school years and early college years, that people are, you should do this and you should do this and you should do that. Well, maybe what people should do is not go to college for the first year out of high
Yeah,
school to figure it out.
agreed. And my colleagues who went to Yale and Harvard, they're particularly good at doing what they're told they're supposed to do. So it's
Right.
even harder for them to break free.
Yeah, of course, because it's just so drilled down into you, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Oh my gosh, Victoria, this was such a great conversation, and we could talk for hours, but
Yeah.
thank you so much. Is there anything else that you didn't talk about that you'd like to mention? And then also let people know where they can find your book and how to get a hold of you.
Yeah, well, when you mentioned you're going to retreat, I was like, well, I want to tell people that I'm hosting retreats actually. So if
Oh,
it's of interest to anybody who's, of that business mind and spiritual mind and wants to, make their goals happen at warp speed, like we're going to have a retreat actually. The next one is coming up in August 22nd to 25th, but we have them about quarterly.
oh,
So I'd love to
nice.
share that with anyone interested in joining us.
Yeah, will that be on your website?
Yes, it will be on my website, so we'll make sure everyone has it after.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we have your website is victoriasong.me.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And we have your Instagram handle and then a link to your courses as well. That'll go in the show
Yes.
notes. All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Continued success with your book. It's definitely I love the name. I'm gonna have to pick it up since I'm going to be flying next week. I'll that'll be a good read for on the plane.
I
So
feel like we'll be very aligned.
yeah, for sure, without question. All right, Victoria, thank you so much. It was so great to see you today. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.